You walk into a room, there are a few people talking, and you want to join them. You actually have something you could say. But suddenly, your brain starts asking questions. Where do I look? Should I say something? What if they think I'm weird? So, you wait. Someone else starts talking. The moment disappears, and you walk away thinking, why am I like this? Maybe you've had that happen in a classroom. Maybe at lunch. Maybe when meeting someone new. Maybe at a party, at work, or even while typing a simple message. And then, hours later, you replay the whole thing. Did I sound awkward? Did they notice? Why did I say that? But here's the part that's easy to miss. Feeling awkward or nervous around people does not automatically mean there's something wrong with you. Being nervous before meeting someone new, speaking in front of people, or joining a conversation is a normal human experience. Social anxiety disorder is different. It involves persistent, intense fear around social situations that causes significant distress or interferes with everyday life. And if that fear is so strong that it's regularly getting in the way of school, friendships, work, or everyday life, that's something worth talking about with a trusted adult or qualified professional. So this video isn't about magically becoming fearless. It's about understanding what's happening when social situations feel difficult and learning how to gradually make them easier. Because the problem may not be that you're bad at socializing. It may be that you're putting so much attention on yourself that there's barely any attention left for the actual conversation. And once you understand that pattern, you can start changing it. The loop. Imagine a stickman named Alex. Alex walks into a classroom and sees three people talking. His first thought is, they probably don't want me there. So instead of walking over, he stands nearby. Then he starts thinking about himself. Am I standing weird? Do I look nervous? What would I even say? He becomes more tense. He waits longer. Eventually, the group starts talking about something else. Alex leaves. And later that night, he thinks, see? I knew it. I don't fit in. Here's the strange part. Alex never actually found out whether they wanted him there. He predicted rejection. That prediction made him hesitate. The hesitation made joining harder. And then, he used the result as evidence that his original prediction was correct. This is one of the patterns that can keep social anxiety going, and it's useful to see the whole loop. A social situation creates a prediction. The prediction pulls your attention inward. You start monitoring yourself. That self-monitoring can increase anxiety and self-consciousness. You become quieter, tense, or less willing to participate. Then afterward, you replay what happened, and avoiding the next situation starts to feel safer. That relief can reinforce the urge to avoid, and the cycle starts again. 1. Your attention turns inward. One important part of this cycle is self-focused attention. Imagine you're talking to someone, but instead of really listening, part of your mind is watching you. How does my voice sound? What are my hands doing? Do I look nervous? Was that sentence stupid? You're technically in a conversation, but mentally you're also standing outside yourself, judging your performance. This kind of self-monitoring is an important part of cognitive models and treatments for social anxiety. CBT approaches can specifically work on reducing excessive self-focus and training attention toward the outside world and the actual interaction. And there's another problem. When you're anxious, your brain can start predicting what other people are thinking. They probably think I'm boring. They noticed I was nervous. They must think I'm stupid. But a prediction isn't the same thing as evidence. You might feel certain that someone judged you negatively, but unless you actually know what they thought, you're filling in the gap. And anxious thinking can make the negative explanation feel much more convincing than it really is. 2. Then you replay everything. Then comes what happens after the conversation. You replay it. You analyze your words. You remember one awkward second and forget the other 5 minutes. You think, why did I say that? I should have answered differently. That was embarrassing. This kind of post-event rumination is a well-studied pattern in social anxiety. Research has found a meaningful relationship between persistent negative post-event thinking and social anxiety, although researchers are still studying exactly how much it contributes to the development and maintenance of the problem. And it can connect back to the first part of the loop. The more you monitor yourself during the conversation, the more material you may have to criticize afterward. So now you have, before the conversation, what if they judge me? During the conversation, how am I doing? After the conversation, why did I do that? 3 different moments, 1 continuous loop. 3. Why avoiding feels so good. And eventually, avoiding feels better. You don't raise your hand. You don't walk over. You don't ask the question. You don't send the message. You don't join the group. And for a moment, relief. That's important, because avoidance can genuinely reduce anxiety in the short term. But that relief doesn't necessarily mean the fear has been solved. It can accidentally reinforce the behavior. Your brain gets a simple message. Good thing we left. So the next time a similar situation appears, avoiding it may feel like the safest option again. And that's how something that started as a way to feel better can gradually become part of the problem. But now you can see something important. The problem isn't just the nervous feeling, it's the cycle around it. So if we want to change the cycle, we don't need to magically remove anxiety first. We can start by changing what happens inside the cycle. So how do you break it? Not, just be confident, and not, go talk to 100 people tomorrow. That usually isn't helpful. A better idea is much less dramatic. Practice, not perfect practice. Not forcing yourself into the hardest situation imaginable. Gradual practice. CBT for social anxiety can include exposure to feared or avoided social situations, along with work on thoughts, self-focused attention, safety behaviors, and social skills. For children and young people, NICE recommends CBT focused specifically on social anxiety, including exposure and opportunities to rehearse social skills. Think about physical training. You wouldn't walk into a gym, pick up the heaviest weight in the building, and decide that struggling means you're weak. You start with something manageable, you repeat it, you recover. Then, when you're ready, you increase the challenge. Social confidence can be approached in a similar way. Not because your brain is literally a muscle, but because repeated practice can make skills and situations more familiar. And importantly, you need breaks too. You don't have to spend every day deliberately making yourself uncomfortable. The goal is to choose challenges that are difficult enough to practice, but manageable enough that you can actually do them. This isn't a one-day transformation, it's a process. Step 1. Stop trying to perform perfectly. Your goal in a conversation is not to sound impressive. It's not to deliver the perfect sentence. It's not to make everyone like you. Your first goal can simply be, participate. Maybe you normally never speak during a group discussion. Your challenge isn't to become the most talkative person in the room. It's to make one comment. Maybe you normally avoid saying hello. Your challenge is simply, hey. That's it. A small action counts, because you're practicing participation, not perfection. And this directly attacks the first part of the loop. I need to perform perfectly. You don't. You only need to participate. And eventually, you begin learning something important. I can talk to people without having every sentence planned. Step 2. Move your attention outward. The next time you're talking to someone, notice when your attention moves toward, how am I doing? Do I look nervous? Was that weird? You don't have to fight those thoughts. Just notice them. Then gently move your attention back. What is this person actually saying? What are they interested in? What can I ask about that? For example, imagine Alex meets someone who says, I've been playing basketball a lot lately. Alex could spend the next 10 seconds thinking, what should I say? Was my face weird? Do I look interested? Or he could simply become curious. How long have you been playing? Now the focus is no longer, am I performing correctly? It's, I'm having a conversation with a person. That shift toward what the other person is saying is also consistent with NHS guidance for social anxiety, which recommends focusing on what people are saying instead of automatically assuming the worst. And don't turn eye contact into another performance test. You don't need to stare at someone to prove you're confident. Natural eye contact comes and goes during normal conversations. If it makes you uncomfortable, you can work on it gradually alongside everything else. The goal is still the conversation, not winning an eye contact competition. Step 3. Make the challenge smaller. This might be the most important part. Don't go from, I barely talk to anyone, straight to, I'm going to give a speech in front of 50 people. Build a ladder. At the bottom might be, saying hello. Then, asking one simple question. Then, making one comment. Then, staying in a conversation for another minute. Then, joining a group conversation. And eventually, if it makes sense for you, taking on bigger challenges. The exact ladder depends on the person. The goal isn't to compare yourself with someone else. The goal is to make the next step challenging but manageable. That's the basic idea behind gradual exposure, approaching feared or avoided situations progressively instead of trying to jump from 0 to 100. Clinical guidance for both adults and young people supports exposure to feared or avoided social situations as part of CBT. And there is something else you should expect. Sometimes the first few attempts will still feel uncomfortable. That doesn't automatically mean the practice failed. You're not trying to prove, I wasn't nervous. You're practicing. I was nervous and I stayed anyway. Step 4. Let awkward moments be awkward. Because yes, sometimes you're going to say something weird. You might forget what you were saying. You might stumble over your words. You might say you too when someone tells you to enjoy your meal. It happens. The goal isn't to eliminate every awkward moment. The goal is to stop treating every awkward moment like evidence that something is wrong with you. One awkward sentence is one awkward sentence. It's not a permanent judgment, and sometimes the other person doesn't even care. They may forget it 5 minutes later. Meanwhile, you're replaying it for 3 hours, so the next time something slightly awkward happens, try asking, what actually happened? Not, what did everyone secretly think? What actually happened? Maybe you stumbled. Maybe they smiled and kept talking. Maybe the conversation continued. Maybe they didn't react at all. That's information. The rest is your prediction. And this directly attacks another part of the loop. What happened is not automatically the same thing as what your anxiety predicted happened. Step 5. Check the facts afterward. This is especially useful because anxious thoughts can become very convincing after a social interaction. So instead of sitting there asking, "Did they think I was weird?" ask, "What did they say? How did they respond? Did they continue the conversation? Did they answer your question? Did they say goodbye normally? What happened in reality?" This isn't about forcing yourself to think positively. It's about separating what happened from what your anxiety predicted happened. And that distinction matters, because the brain can create a very confident story without having very much evidence. Now let's return to Alex. Remember the first scene? Alex saw the group. He thought, "They don't want me there." He watched himself. He became nervous. He left. This time, the situation is exactly the same. Same room, same people, same possibility of feeling awkward. But Alex decides to make the challenge smaller. He walks over. He doesn't suddenly become fearless. His heart is still beating quickly. He still wonders what to say. But instead of trying to perform perfectly, he simply says, "Hey, can I sit here?" Someone moves over. Yeah, that's it. No dramatic music. No magical transformation. The conversation isn't perfect. Alex says something slightly awkward. Someone doesn't hear him the first time. He repeats himself. And then they keep talking. But this time, Alex stays. And that's the important part. The goal wasn't to prove that he was suddenly confident. The goal was to give himself a new experience to learn from. I expected this to go terribly. It didn't. Maybe next time the anxiety is still there. That's okay. He practices again. Maybe he asks another question. Then another. Maybe one day he joins a group conversation without thinking about it quite as much. Progress can be very small. And sometimes you may have a bad day and go backward. That's normal too. Improvement isn't always a straight line. The bigger idea. And this is where I want you to remember the biggest idea from this entire video. You do not need to become a completely different person. You do not need to become the loudest person in the room. You do not need to eliminate every nervous feeling. And you definitely don't need to become fearless overnight. For many people, becoming more comfortable socially is a gradual process of understanding the pattern, practicing manageable situations, and learning through experience. Evidence-based CBT for social anxiety uses approaches such as exposure, attention work, cognitive strategies, and skills rehearsal. So start small. Say hello. Ask one question. Join for a minute. Stay a little longer. Then take a break. Come back later. Try again. You don't have to practice constantly. You don't have to force yourself through something that feels overwhelming. And you don't have to judge yourself for needing time, because confidence doesn't always arrive first. Sometimes you act while you're nervous, and confidence is what slowly grows afterward. And if social anxiety is persistent, intense, or interfering with school, work, friendships, or everyday life, you don't have to handle it alone. Talking with a trusted adult or a qualified mental health professional can be a good next step. Social anxiety disorder is treatable, and CBT is a well-supported treatment. For young people, NICE recommends CBT specifically focused on social anxiety, including exposure and skills rehearsal. Maybe you've spent a long time thinking, "I'm just awkward." But maybe a better way to see it is, "I'm learning." You're learning how to stay in a conversation. You're learning that not every pause is a disaster. You're learning that other people are usually people too, not judges waiting for you to make a mistake. And slowly, one small experience at a time, the situation that once felt impossible can start to feel ordinary. Not because you became fearless, but because you discovered that you could handle being uncomfortable and keep going. That's progress. And that's enough. If this helped you understand something you couldn't explain before, subscribe to Hidden Patterns.